Welcome to the project of building an ultra-detailed high-speed jet boat. We start with the stitch and glue plywood method to shape the basic hull of the boat. Here is an old water jet engine, professionally known as a jet drive. It has been severely calcified, requiring us to restore it and cut off the damaged shell. The mechanic uses a chop saw to remove the excess metal and smooth the surface. Next is the precision machining process, using a drill press to make screw holes and assembling the intake grate. To prevent debris from getting sucked into the water pump, the stainless steel bars are tightened to ensure a stable hydrodynamic flow entering the system. The drive shaft is being faced and machined on a specialized mechanical lathe. The precision of this shaft determines the smoothness of the entire drivetrain. The mechanic is pressing the bushings and bearings into the housing of the water jet system. The impeller is fitted onto the shaft, responsible for sucking in and compressing water at high pressure. A metal spacer is inserted, and the stator nozzle assembly is ready to be installed. Industrial silicone sealant is applied to completely seal all the joints to prevent water leaks. The exhaust directional cone is attached, and the mounting bolts are tightened with a wrench. It's temporarily secured. Now, let's move on to processing the plywood for the hull. An angle grinder is used to cut along the wavy lines, creating a curved hydrodynamic profile. Specialized wood glue is used to hold the plywood panels together. The stitch and glue technique is applied, using steel wire to stitch the edges of the plywood. The panels are bent to form a V-shaped bottom, helping the boat cut through waves better at high speeds. The hull's skeleton starts to take shape as the structural bulkheads are installed. These bulkheads create buoyancy chambers and maximize the torsional rigidity of the hull. A grinder is used to cut off the steel wire ends, sticking out after the hull is shaped. A layer of red liquid polyester resin is brushed on to act as a gel coat base protecting the wooden core. A layer of fiberglass cloth is spread over the entire inside of the boat to form a composite shell. A brush is used to soak the fiberglass in resin, pressing firmly to squeeze out as many air bubbles as possible. PVC pipes are laid along the bottom to act as reinforced stringers. More fiberglass is applied over the PVC pipes, creating an incredibly solid rib structure. The boat is flipped upside down to sand and trim the excess composite resin at the joints. The edge clamping plywood strips are removed. After the resin has cured and hardened, thick steel bars are machined and welded to create the engine mounts. Arc welding technology ensures the steel mounts can withstand the immense vibrations from the engine block. These steel mounts are drilled and screwed into solid wood blocks acting as load-bearing beams. The load-bearing assembly is placed onto the PVC frame, then permanently secured by pouring composite resin. Careful measurements are taken, and a grinder is used to cut a precise hole at the transom of the boat. The jet drive unit is inserted directly through this hole for installation. The mating area is reinforced with multiple layers of fiberglass and resin to withstand the static thrust. A universal joint shaft extends inside, ready for the pillow block bearing installation. This bearing block helps align the shaft perfectly, preventing any wobbling at high RPMs. The drive shaft is reinforced using an arc welder, ensuring the joint can withstand the torque. An angle grinder is used to flatten the welds, followed by assembling the universal joint coupling. The ball bearing block is pressed into place to eliminate centrifugal force when the shaft spins. A wrench is used to tighten the nuts, locking this driveline coupling securely in place. The entire drive shaft assembly is test-fitted into the boat, and the metal support brackets are tack welded. The welds require absolute precision to keep the shaft perfectly aligned. Moving on to the supercharger, the mechanic is carefully inspecting the compressor lobes. A metal flange is placed on the drill press to create precise bolt holes. This flange is mounted onto the supercharger's port. Screws are tightened, and the gears are packed with grease, Continuing with the exhaust manifold assembly, cutting and welding a custom square flange. The flange is carefully machined and milled. To ensure the smoothest possible exhaust flow, the exhaust pipe is welded straight in to channel exhaust gases out of the engine compartment, machining a cylindrical part on the lathe. Pre-fitted with a bearing and ready for assembly, assembling the pulley onto the supercharger's drive shaft. To receive power from the engine's crankshaft, use a wrench to tighten the pulley's center nut, ensuring it doesn't slip when the engine revs. Installing the accessory drive belt onto the engine, and using an impact gun to tighten the pulleys, cutting and welding the curved section of the exhaust manifold to optimize the tight space inside the hull. Attaching 2 thick steel bars to the bottom of the oil pan to serve as the main mounting base for the engine block. Continuing to firmly weld these steel brackets to create a solid foundation that withstands vibrations. The chain hoist slowly lowers the Toyota engine block into its exact mounting position inside the boat. The process of aligning the engine shaft and the jet drive shaft is done extremely meticulously and carefully. Firmly welding the engine mounts to the composite base, locking the engine securely to the boat's skeletal frame, lifting the engine out to apply a protective coating, spraying a light gray primer coat over the entire engine block, applying a bright red powder coating, both for fire resistance and to enhance its sporty aesthetic. Peeling off the masking tape. This engine block has completely transformed, looking sleek. Reassembling the black mounting system with an impact gun, ready for the auxiliary components. Aligning the cams and installing the timing belt to synchronize the rhythm of the valve system. Placing the starter motor into position on the flywheel and securely tightening the locking bolts. Assembling the heat-resistant black-painted exhaust manifold onto the red engine block to create contrast, placing the sealing gasket, and carefully lowering the supercharger onto the engine's intake manifold. A carburetor unit is installed right on top, responsible for mixing the air-fuel ratio fed into the engine, installing a dust cover to protect the belt on the front of the engine and tightening the screws, equipping an additional accessory pulley, and tensioning it with a specialized tool onto the drive belt for the supercharger. This is the power pump forcing air into the combustion chamber, plugging in the high-tension spark plug wires and the distributor to ensure a precise ignition current. Mounting a high-performance SC Project exhaust muffler, promising to create a powerful roaring sound. Connecting the vacuum hoses and tightening the new oil filter onto the engine block. The engine block has been fully detailed and is ready for the testing process. Installing the cooling water pipe system to dissipate heat from the engine's combustion chamber. Overall, the machine looks extremely powerful and complete with all its components. Accurately drilling and cutting the tail section of the hull to insert the water jet pump unit. Machining and sanding the surface of the engine compartment lid to create adhesion for the primer layer. Spraying a beautiful blue protective paint layer onto the heat dissipation vents on the lid. Pumping silicone sealant around the pump unit. Pressing it tightly against the hull to prevent leaks. Aligning the drive shaft parallel to the bottom of the boat. And tack welding the load-bearing frame system. The welds require care to eliminate all vibrations when the shaft rotates at high speed. Measuring and cutting thick galvanized steel bars to create a skeletal frame above the deck, reinforcing the steel frame joints to the boat hull. With fiberglass resin to increase rigidity, drilling and screwing the steering wheel to the galvanized frame, preparing to connect the steering cables, tightening the nuts of the steering control cable, connecting straight to the rear jet nozzle system, measuring and cutting plywood sheets to fully cover the front deck of the bow, applying synthetic resin over all the plywood to enhance its waterproofing capability, taking detailed measurements of the steel frame angles to cut small wooden boards to fill the gaps, assembling the small boards around the engine compartment area, completely enclosing the load-bearing frame system, securing the floor surface with plastic resin, and covering it with a structural reinforcing fiberglass membrane, using a roller to squeeze out all the air bubbles underneath the fiberglass layer to optimize the bond, continuing to apply resin to patch the gaps, creating a perfectly flat deck surface. Using sandpaper to smooth the entire hull. Preparing for the final color painting process. Beginning the process of spraying paint on the entire hull, using an even pressure spray gun on the flat surfaces. The dark blue paint layer covers the inside, bringing an extremely eye-catching sporty look. Not forgetting to also spray paint the water jet unit, synchronizing the color with the entire boat. Using specialized masking tape to cover it up. Getting ready to paint the decorative stripes on the hull. The white borders are meticulously painted, running along the bow to create aerodynamic highlights. Starting to assemble the steering nozzle into the exhaust unit of the water jet pump system, securing the hydraulic steering rods. To deflect the water stream, steering the boat left or right, tightening the pivot bolts of the exhaust nozzle. To ensure smooth and effortless steering maneuvers. Checking the travel distance of the nozzle again. To optimize the steering angle so the water flow isn't obstructed. Applying silicone sealants and closing the protective cover. Shielding the top of the pump assembly. Sealing the exposed edges with tape. To prevent water from backflowing into the engine bay. The most nerve-wracking stage. The chain hoist slowly lowers the supercharged engine block into the hull, aligning the engine's crankshaft position to match perfectly with the transmission unit down below, installing the drive belt to transfer power from the engine pulley to the water pump shaft pulley, starting to fine-tune the carburetor system, attaching the throttle return spring for acceleration, threading the throttle cable and clamping it tightly into the jaw for responsive throttle control. Assembling the throttle cable unit into the carburetor, securing the retaining pin with needle nose pliers. The trigger-style throttle is temporarily mounted to test the responsiveness of the throttle spring, connecting the fuel filter and fuel pump, routing the transparent fuel lines, wiring the central electrical control system. With the start and kill switches, the button cluster is firmly mounted to the sidewall, so the driver can easily access it in emergencies. A high-capacity battery is installed to provide abundant power for the entire ignition system. Setting up the water cooling system, using a screwdriver to tighten the hose clamps. The coolant hoses are carefully routed, connecting directly to the engine's water jacket. The water inlet is taken directly from the tap pipe on the jet pump unit at the stern. The water pressure will constantly pump water in to cool the engine while the system is running. Moving on to the decorative painting stage. Applying a coat of red paint to the rear sports spoiler. Threading the hydraulic steering cable through a hole in the hull, connecting it directly to the steering nozzle's mount. The other end of the cable is locked onto the steering wheel, ensuring smooth and precise steering. Installing a monolithic molded seat that is fully waterproof into the center of the cockpit. The overall jet boat masterpiece is complete, boasting a sharp, aerodynamic design. Its heart is a modified car engine fitted with a supercharger, delivering continuous thrust via a wide drive belt. Every single mechanical component has been meticulously crafted, ready for the practical test run on the river. The boat is officially launched into the water, starting up and bursting into a sprint from the very first second. The machine glides incredibly smoothly, the exhaust note from the custom muffler roaring over the calm water. The jet stream steering mechanism works flawlessly, helping the hull take spectacular turns without decelerating. A close-up shot from the cockpit reveals the intense vibration of the machine when operating at full power. The cooling system draws water directly from the jet drive, maintaining a safe temperature for the combustion chambers. Observed from the drone, you can see the boat speeding away, splashing white foam on both sides. The signature V-shaped hull design maximizes its effectiveness, cutting through the waves and maintaining balance at high speeds. Water jet pump technology completely eliminates the propeller, allowing for safe navigation in shallow waters. The thrust generated from the rear water compression unit is powerful enough to maintain an astonishing cruising speed. The seamless coordination between the throttle and the steering wheel allows for executing smooth and tight turns. The wood core composite hull proves its excellent rigidity against hydrodynamic pressure. This is truly a formidable mechanical beast, turning an old car engine into a watercraft. The red rear spoiler creates downforce, preventing the bow from lifting when accelerating suddenly. The supercharged engine always maintains a high RPM range, providing unlimited pulling power to the pump system. The camera angle from the stern shows a water jet, blasting out at massive pressure, tearing up the river's surface. Water is drawn from underneath and discharged through a narrow nozzle. This is the core dynamic principle of the jet boat. The boat confidently glides past the floating buoys, demonstrating incredibly flexible maneuverability. A phenomenally successful DIY project, proving excellent mechanical and creative skills.